They have flown all the way from Sydney just to be here with you guys tonight, so isn't that fantastic? We can give them a round of applause. It places the emphasis on how important this information is, and for me it's almost like the start of, let's call it a movement in Australia, and these guys are the forerunners of what they've set up and actually accomplished. And for us to actually be able to share that information with you tonight is a privilege. So I'd like just to introduce Brian Lowe. I don't know if you've met him with the shirt at the back. But Brian is an ex-financial planner. He's been in the industry for more than 50 years. He's also the founder member of the Self-Managed Super Fund Association of Australia. So wealth of knowledge, and Brian is a representative for Supavest in WA. So as we're going forward, we'll probably be Brian as our first point of contact. So we are working in partnership or association with Supavest. And then Michael, unfortunately I've got to read on but Michael has a diverse experience and began with an engineering degree in the telecommunications industry. With over 20 years of experience, he has stayed at Telcom, or now Telstra, in Sydney, advanced to senior management roles in Queensland and New South Wales, and later joined AAPT, and excelling in the Network Operations Centre and National Faults Client Centre. His tenure concluded due to relocation and alignment with his family and his decision to stay now in New South Wales. And Michael is the Sales Director for Supavest. Okay. Well, we can add some hints to that. Right, and then I'd love to introduce you to Raymond. Raymond Hempstead boasts a wealth of experience commencing with real estate sales in Canberra. He's transitioned into a junior accounting role in Sydney, gained exposure to construction projects, and lately excelled commercial accounting with an Australian-Chinese textile joint venture, and demonstrates strong business acumen, cultural adaptability, and language skills. Better than mine. He's also the founder of One Contract Property, which is now called Supavest, and they have done hundreds of successful transactions over the last couple of years, and we are excited to hear everything from Raymond. So please put your hands together for Raymond.
Thanks Dev. Raymond. Appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, my English is probably my only skill. My wife's Italian. I've been married for 36 years. Now she speaks fluent Italian, and I can say ciao and buonanotte and a few other things, and that's it. So it's not bad after 36 years. Thanks for coming together tonight. It'll probably be 45, 50 minutes. I'll run through an overview of what we're doing, what we've done, where we've got to today. We'll run through some facts and figures on property, where superannuation is and what's possible and what we believe is possible, and I'll show you what is actually possible. All right. But before I get started, I'm not a financial planner. My background, as Dev was saying, is in chartered accounting. I didn't do my PY. I got out and went to commercial, and then went self-employed, and then in multiple businesses over the last 30 odd years. But in saying that, tonight we'll run through some examples from my staff members and some colleagues that are playing in the space in a totally different way. All right. Now, in saying that, even though that's important, this next part is even more important. Understanding biases. Now, has everybody in here bought property before? Yeah? If you think back when you bought your first property, what do you know now that you didn't know then? All right? Now, you're going to be hearing a whole lot of stuff tonight that is new to you, and I suppose you'll go away and talk to some people. Now, whether it's your financial planner, whether it's your accountant, whether it's your mortgage broker, whether it's your friend, your next door neighbour, or whatever, you'll get an opinion. Or you'll get their biases. Now, my bias is new property. All right, so everything I say tonight take into that framework that that's my bias, all right? You'll have your own biases around what you hear tonight based on your past experiences, all right? But this is, understand that. You'll be talking to people. You'll be more educated than them on superannuation and property after tonight than most financial planners even. If you're in the position where you've had financial advice in the last 3 years and it's involving property, now this might seem like a wild suggestion, more than likely it's wrong because they don't know about this. All right? What we're going to cover tonight, what's considered a comfortable retirement based on the Australian government and the way we've been educated over the last 20 odd years about superannuation and what our preconceived ideas are. What does a comfortable retirement look like with great cash flow and how we come to that? How do we work? If people haven't got enough to own a full property, we've got a solution for that. If you've got some additional money left over, inside or outside super, we'll show you an option about that. And what are the next steps? Now, a bit of background about me. As Dev said, I grew up in Queanbeyan, just outside of Canberra. I wasn't born in ACT, I was a New South Wales person. I left school in year 11, got into real estate, sold property in North Lyneham in ACT. After 6 months, I hated it. Quit. Now, just before that, I'd got engaged to an Italian young lady. And so I'd been engaged probably 6 weeks. And I come back to the restaurant that night and I said, I've quit. And she said she was devastated because she thought I was this real estate person. It's like, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. Now, this is how much thought I gave to my financial future. Between mouthfuls of pasta, she was sitting there, she's in tears, and she said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. And she said, you're good at maths at school. Now, understand I left school at year 11 because of some situations. I was doing 4-unit maths and physics and chemistry, so I was okay. She said, why don't you become an accountant? Now, between 2 mouthfuls of pasta, I said, okay. I'd just been engaged. I left her in Queanbeyan with her mum and dad, and I moved to Sydney to a place that I said I'd never live. And I've been there for 36 years. And I became an accountant. Took on a trainee accountancy role and then went through that. And yeah, amazing. But in that period of time, got my qualifications and got out of accounting, multiple different businesses. Now, we all see our parents. Now, my dad's my hero. He passed over the last couple of years, but my dad made an error in his superannuation because he took bad advice in his early 50s. When the market dropped and the shares dropped, his financial advisor told him to get out of that share and go into a safe share. So in that one foul swoop, he lost over half of his superannuation moving into a safe share. And so by the time he retired on the government pension. Now, my dad's a proud man, hard worker, not a businessman. Never recovered financially. And seeing my dad go from the major breadwinner to being stressed about money in retirement was really, and he was proud. He wouldn't take anything from us kids because I've got 3 sisters as well. Move forward up until 3 years ago. I was in the property game, working with accountants and financial planners and mortgage brokers, providing investment properties. We'd sold 2 NDIS properties to 2 clients, untitled land. It came up to titling, and they said, like literally a day before land titling, they said, we want to put this into a self-managed superannuation fund. My question was, okay, have you got it established? No. So from a business point of view, that was 2 deals that we lost. But what it did, it highlighted me to the fact of the shortcomings in self-managed superannuation. Now, you've always been able to buy property using your self-managed super fund. But what you haven't been able to do is build property where you're using debt. So what does that do? It actually eliminates 70% of the really good high cash flow properties that you can't invest in. Now, why is that important? Because if you're using your superannuation to build your long-term wealth and you're using negative gearing or neutrally gearing, you're not growing it really substantially. Whereas if you could change that and now buy high cash flow properties or positive cash flow properties, now you're actually putting more money back into your super fund than the maximum contribution that the government allows you. So you're moving ahead faster. And so we're going to cover off how that all works and how that can change people's lifestyle, whether you've got clients or whether you're looking at investing yourself. Right? What's considerable a comfortable retirement? Now, even today, the government's still talking about this comfortable criteria. Comfortable is you're 65 years old, you own your own home, and you're going to be living on, as a couple, about $70,000 a year as income from your $690,000 you've saved up in your superannuation fund. And you've got to be in relatively good health. What they don't tell you in this is a good chunk of that is still government pension. So even at $690,000 a year in your $690,000 in your super fund, you're still reliant on the government pension. Now, you can go onto moneysmart.gov website and see these figures. Comfortable retirement, $70,000 works out to be about $1,300 a week as a couple. What that breaks down to, and these are on the tables, that's $239 a week for food and groceries. Lunches and dinners, $93 a week. Now, think about it. You work 40, 50, 60 hours a week now. You retire, you're not working at all. How much are you going to spend going out seeing friends and family, going out to eat? I don't know, when my wife and myself go out at the moment for a dinner, I don't know, we're north of that for one dinner. This one surprises me. Overseas, who wants to travel when they retire? $35 a week? Now, like, it might seem like a joke, but see, this is what the Australian public are being educated on without knowing it. Because they're saying, keep on putting keep your employer paying the 11% contribution into your super fund, put it into industry super funds, and hope that everything goes well, and hope when it comes to retirement that you've got $690,000 in your super fund. Now, I love numbers. I don't like hope. I like a plan. And hoping, like, I'll go back. Who invested in Qantas 15, 18 years ago? You don't want to put up your hand? It's all right. Now, again, biases. I think I own $30,000 or $40,000 worth of shares. That's it. I don't play in the share market. We invested in, years ago my wife said, we need to get into the funeral business. And this is like 25, 30 years ago. What do you want the funeral? She's a smart lady. We invested in the funeral business. A big American company was buying out a whole lot of the smaller funeral parlours around the place, and we made some money. Thank you very much. My wife had a good stock pick. Haven't had much chance since then because I don't follow it. One of my senior bookkeeper in the office, he plays around with the stock market and he makes some good money. But he's now investing in his super and found out what he can do with his super. So, but again, it's my bias. This is what the government says. If you're not happy with those figures, this is what you can do to make it better. You can work longer. you can reduce your expense. No, I don't know how they justify that next statement, reduce your expenses.
Spend $15 on travel instead of $35.
Or less than $200 on food and groceries. Now, I don't know how much you eat, but $200, $230 a week isn't a lot for food and groceries. Downsides to lower, like it all talks about reducing your lifestyle. Because up until now, like me running a business, I've been self-employed for 20 odd years, 25 years. In business, as an accountant, you look at expenses. You can reduce your expenses so low. If you're really smart, you can reduce them down to zero. But what you can't do in superannuation is you haven't been able to determine your income, because it's based on what the share market's doing, what the directors of those companies are doing, what the industry is doing. So you're hoping. What we'll talk about tonight is actually giving you a plan to actually grow your income. Still not knocking managing your expenses, you've got to do that. But now you've got to look at how much can I grow my income? And any good accountant, especially if there's a couple of accountants in the room, how do you work with your accountant and your financial advisors to do that? In checking out the good property, what's good, what's bad, working out with your financial advisors to do that. Outside of the financial disclaimer, this is probably the most important part of the whole night. Why are you here? Have you got a plan for where you want to end up in life? Is it written down? Now, my son and I've got 3 kids. My son turned 21 a couple of weeks ago. I've got a daughter that's 31 and then one that's 33. Now, the 33-year-old's got a couple of kids, so I'm a grandfather. I know I don't look it, so thank you. But Anna and Damien, they decided, Damien, he's an actor. He's been acting for 12 years now. One of his senior acting coaches was getting married. They got married in Italy. They invited him to Italy for the wedding, and he said, yeah, he'll go. And so he planned for 6 months. And Anna, she's just been through a really bad divorce. She said, Damien said, look, come along with me. So they planned for 6 months about going to a 6-week trip to Italy, France, England, Ireland, and then coming back home. And then she ended up taking a bit of a detour to Dubai because she had some friends over there that put their hand up. But they planned for 6 months for a 6-week trip. How many of us spend that amount of time planning and setting up goals and strategies of how we're going to retire? Do you know why most people don't? It's because they don't believe they've got control over their income and how they're going to retire. If you're going to travel, like we travelled over here from Sydney to Perth, and outside of sitting on the runway while they changed the spark plugs on the engine for 2 hours, it was fairly uneventful. But we sat in the exit row. On the way back home, we are travelling business because we're going to catch the red eye. So we get comfort going back. All right, but it's a choice. When you're travelling, probably about 3 months ago I was over here. Again, I flew back because when I travel I usually catch a red eye when I leave Perth, and so I go business on the way back. Virgin cancelled the flight on the way back and we got shuffled across to Qantas. Now, that was okay, but they shoved me literally at the back near the toilets. Now, on a 4.5-hour flight at midnight after you've done a 16-hour day, it's not probably the best. But I didn't choose that. But most people, when they're travelling, when they're retiring, that's where they choose to go. Because they don't have a choice. They haven't made the choice. You choose how you want to live. My younger sister, her idea of travel is her and her husband Peter, he's just turning 60 this weekend. They pack up the 4-wheel drive, they go to Sahara, and they go bush. 10 dig a hole, the whole package. My wife, if it hasn't got 3 stars, she doesn't call it travelling. But it's choices. How do you want to live? Right? How much time have you spent with your advisors working that out? Now, a lot of people spend some time working at how they're going to structure their affairs through family trust companies, unit trusts, etc., all for before they're retiring, how they're managing their investment portfolio. One of the things I like, it's not how much money you earn, it's how much money you keep. Now, up until now, accountants haven't been able to use the best tax vehicle in Australia, being an SMSF, to its fullest advantage. Because your short and medium term income and your lifestyle is managed correctly through family trusts, corporate trusts, unit trusts, sometimes personally, how you manage that structure, because that's the income that you can live on today. But at the same time, how you're managing your income for long-term wealth creation, and we'll cover off this in a minute, that's where they haven't been able to play properly. Superannuation, couple of choices, and I'm telling you things you already know. The industry super funds, people talk about self-managed as being expensive. Now, depending, it could cost you to set up the right structure, $5,500. I know through our company we charge $6,900 to set up the corporate structure with bare trusts and corporate trustees. Depending on who you're doing, it could be plus or minus that. So it's a once-off fee. The running costs, it's a few $1,000s a year. Compare that to an industry super fund. If you've got $150,000 sitting in your industry super fund now, that's costing you more to run each year than a self-managed super fund, in most cases. If you've got more than that, good luck. Why do most financial planners talk to you about this and putting money in the share market? How do they get paid? They get paid by percentage of funds under management. So if you've got $100,000, they'll take a percentage of that. If you make money, they take a percentage of that. If you lose money, they still take a percentage of that. The financial planners that play in the property space, however, they'll say they're worth $500 an hour and they'll charge you X amount of dollars. They know their worth, but you know the fixed figure. If you make money, lose money, then it's working together with them, but it's not based on a percentage of funds under management. So the more you grow, the more they make. I don't think that's fair. But it's a choice. But this is all most people have been chosen because the rhetoric around, I hear it all the time, it costs $15,000 to manage a super fund. It's too expensive. It takes a lot of time to manage. Why have a property portfolio? Because it's too expensive. But yet people have property portfolios outside of superannuation. What have they got? They've got great advisors, they've got a great property manager, they've got a great accountant, they've got a great financial planner that set them up. Now, in here, if these guys don't make any money, what choice have you got? If your advisors over here don't support you well enough, if your property manager's not doing the right thing, what do? You sack them and get another one. If your accountant's not doing the right thing, you have a chat with them. And if they're still stubborn, then you go to another accountant. Same with, it's your money. You should have total control about how it's managed. Not sit back and hope that these people are doing the right thing for you. Self-managed super funds. Up until Supavest, you had limited choices. And there's been a big movement over the years, positive and negative. Probably about 12 years ago, there was a big push for self-managed super funds to get into property, and what they were buying is high-rise apartments, units and townies. Why? Because that's what was under a single acquirable asset. Off the plan sales, or you could buy an existing property. Has anybody experienced that? No? Yes? Making sense? Why? Because here, a single acquirable asset, if it's new, means you put down a deposit and the builder has to fund the full deal. Up until now, it was a 10% deposit sitting in a trust account and if it's $1 million property, the builder had to fund the $1 million. Once it was completed, then your super fund pays the $1 million and the builder gets paid back and you now own the property. That's why there was limited choice, because it was up to the builder to fund the $1 million. Now, if he's doing 10 deals a month at $1 million, that means it's $120 million worth of capital that he has to have available on his balance sheet to be able to fund those 120 deals. It's a lot of money. What builders are around that have got that and can do that consistently? Now, if you look at builders that are doing it, and there are some doing it, when they're building an investment product that can be sold to a self-managed super fund under a single acquirable asset, they'll build it in that location. Now, why are they building it there? Because from a business point of view, that will return them the best return for their business. You as a self-managed super fund, you're just their exit. Is it a good deal for you? Hopefully. But you don't have any choice, because you don't have a choice of the product. We've removed that problem, because we removed the builder out of the solution of funding it. Now you've got the choice of any builder anywhere in Australia and any product. Covered up this a little bit, wrong advice. Now this is where I was saying here, if you've had investment advice over the last 3 years from a financial planner and it's in regards to property, and they don't know about our product, more than likely they haven't been putting you into high cash flow properties. Now, high cash flow properties are properties that are actually earning you more money and putting more money back into your fund or your pocket after it's paid your P&I loan repayments, after paid all expenses. So it's actually making you money. Now, the reason they won't talk to you about those, because, for example, I built a high cash flow property today and it cost me $1 million and it's returning me $150,000 a year in rental income. If I wanted to sell that, I would sell that for $1.6, $1.7 million today, because I'm using a capex return on that based on a commercial valuation. And that's why superannuation funds aren't involved in usually high cash flow properties, because they're paying above market to get into them. We'll go through that tonight, where we will show you how to buy positive and high cash flow properties at cost price, what it costs to actually build them, rather than paying me my big margin because I've paid for it and built it and then sold it as an income producing asset. And that's where financial planners that don't know about this product start to have their eyes opened. These are still important. Self-managed super fund is your long-term asset hold when it's used correctly. The reason why? Now, this is an $890,000 high cash flow property. It's an NDIS property. It's returning $2,100 a week in rental income, and that's conservative. 20-year loan, couple's 40 years old. By the time they retire at 66, they would have paid, if they hold that property in their personal name, they would have paid $714,000 in tax over that 26 years. If they hold that in a company, and most accountants will tell them that's the place to hold it because it's a structure, you get some tax benefits, you're paying 30% tax rather than 47% marginal rate, they will still pay $455,000 over that 26 years. Now, that's where most accountants and financial advisors stop when you're building property. The challenge here is when you retire under these structures, you're still paying personal tax on that income. Now, if it's held in a company, you're paying 30% tax, but hey, you've still got to live on it. So you've got to pull that money out of the company into your own personal name. Now it's personal income. Now, depending on how much money you're earning, then you're back into the marginal tax rates. So it's great up to retirement. So you've got choice about how you live and how much you work. Really important short and medium term income in structuring yourself correctly. But now, long-term asset hold, that same property, over 26 years, you've only paid $227,000 in tax, because it's a 15% tax rate. The kicker though is, now outside of some rhetoric that's going on around now, except with the $3 million capital, the rest of it, in this property at retirement, if that's the only property you've got, when you retire, you're paying zero tax and zero capital gain. Compared to here, it's 30% and here marginal rate. So it's how much money you earn and how much money you keep by putting it into the right tax structure. Does that make sense? Now, we've covered off this. What's possible? With Supavest, I gave you a bit of an example of how I set it up, I suppose, how my dad influenced that, and the choices, how I invest outside of super. Right now, if you go back, I lost everything 20 years ago, and I started from zero again. My business partner lost his wife and his family. My wife stood by me, and we worked hard to get back up again. And it was about working hard, investing, and developing, and a whole lot of other stuff. But in here, how do you invest? What do you invest in? 2-part contracts into 1-part contract. That's the biggest thing. Because if you're buying property today, if you go down to any of the home worlds or display villages, you're buying 2-part contracts. You're buying a block of land, or a contract for a block of land, and a contract for build. Now, if you want to pay cash in your super fund, you can do that. And you can build that in your super fund right now. And you don't need us. If that suits your financial goals, then go ahead and do it. If that's going to give you the money to suit you in retirement, go ahead and do it. Or you can now leverage in your super fund using debt and put yourself in a totally different position because of what you're buying and what you're funding. Right? Because we're removing the builder from the situation. And at the end of it, I'm going to talk about Safe Property, which is another product we just launched 5 or 6 weeks ago, which is really exciting for people that have either got additional money left over after their purchase, they've got family members that can't get into the property market that want to, or they just want to diversify across a number of properties and they don't want to own the whole property. So I'll cover that off as well. Now, it's important you understand you've got choice. The whole thing about Supavest is to give you back choice. I don't want to tell you you have to build something or build some with a certain builder, or you have to build a certain type of product. I just want to make you understand that you've now got total choice in how you manage your money, because it's about generational wealth. If you think about, who knows this symbol? Anybody seen that? How much money has been spent telling you that that's a good symbol? Millions? Whose money's that?
Unions.
No, if you're invested with that super fund, it's yours.
The unions believe it's theirs.
But like, they're spending money to tell you that that's a good symbol, to give you comfort that that's where you've got your money, and to advertise to other people to invest their money into that company so they can, anyway, it's your money. You should have choice how it's spent. Now, this gives you an example of what is possible, and this comes back to having a plan. Right? Rather than just sitting in a super fund and hoping that the industry super fund does well, what's your plan? What's your plan how you're managing that money? Like my son, when he said, okay, he's going to go overseas, he came up with a plan of how he's going to fund it. He didn't come to Dad and say, Dad, lend me $20,000. He came up with a plan to come up with $20,000 to actually fund himself going overseas and support himself while he was there. We need to do that with our lifestyle and how we're going to live in retirement. Now, one plan, you've got $250,000 in your super. You can go to the bank and say, now I bank with St George with our businesses. I can go, say, if I had shares in St George, I can go to St George and say, I've got $250,000 with St George or Westpac shares. How much are you going to lend me? Maximum they'll lend me is 50% of that value under a margin scheme. All right? Now, if anybody doesn't know what a margin scheme is, that'll say if the shares are $250,000, they'll lend me 50% of that. So I can buy another $125,000 worth of shares. Say I buy St George shares or Westpac. If the share price goes down, I've got to make sure my lending is always 50% of the value of my shares. So therefore, I've either got to put more money in, or I've got to sell down shares in a period of time where the shares are worth less to actually bring my value back up to 50%. It's a plan, but it is a risky plan. Real estate, we can take that $250,000 and use a 35% deposit and buy a property that we're going to build that's worth $714,000. At completion of construction, now these are the two have-tos to work with Supavest. You have to have a 35% deposit of the single contract price, and it has to be against a block of dirt. Everything else is up to you now. All right? Everything else. In that situation, you can go at the back end, you can go to the bank and get a loan for 80% of the value and put some money back into your fund. So at the end, you've got $821,000 worth of asset being cash and house. Yeah, you've got a debt against it, but now you've got a tenant in there that's paying off that debt. If you look at how people invest outside of super, isn't that exactly what they do every day of the week? In coming up with an investment strategy to grow their wealth? You can now have that same strategy inside your super fund in using debt and leverage. Now, I'll run through some examples in a minute that talk about positive cash flow properties, and then I'll show you an example with high cash flow properties and the difference that has in how you're investing. The safe property, that's a fractional ownership. Now, fractional as in you're not buying shares, you're not buying units in a unit trust that own property. You are actually on title. Under tenants in common, you own a 5% share of that property. It's a cash buy, and it will return up to an 11% return per annum based on a renter return paid to you monthly. So you're getting a monthly income, and you're also picking up capital growth on that property over the 5 or 10 years or longer that you want to hold it. If you want to get out of it, you can sell that to me, back to my fund, my company, or you can sell it with any real estate agent in the open market because it's tenants in common with no debt against it. Right, so that's a very exciting product that we launched 5 or 6 weeks ago. How we work, and this is starting to get into the numbers. You choose. It's your money. You choose the location, you choose the builder, you choose the property type. Now, if you want some guidance, we can give you some guidance, a little as much as you like. All right, with Dev and his team here, we can work together with you as much or a little as you like. You choose. Once you choose it, you pay a 35% deposit. Now, this is a paradigm shift that we brought in the market because in the past where people have played in the self-managed super fund space and bought off the plan, if you want to call it that, you put a 10% deposit down that sits in the solicitor's trust account and the builder funds everything. That's why you've had no choice. Here, you put down a 35% deposit, we exchange contracts, that gets used as part of the payment for the block of land with my money, and then I fund the 65% balance with our wholesale funding. Now, your super fund gets a caveatable interest against that block of land, so you're secured against that. Every one of the hundreds of deals that we do are self-securitized against themselves. So that means the construction funding that we have is just against your deal. The hundreds of millions of dollars that have got in borrowing are self-secured against every single one of the deals by themselves. At that stage, you pay the deposit, you don't pay anything more now until the end. My company, we manage the process. We will pay the builder their progress payments through our construction funding. We have quantity surveyors go out at every single stage. Now, it doesn't happen very often, but it's happened twice in 3 years, where we get an invoice for a slab payment, and the QS goes out and the grass was this long on all the site. They wanted 70 grand for the slab, and there was nothing there. Now, we had one just recently. Now, this builder's done, I don't know, 19, 20 deals with us. He put a claim in for a lock-up stage, and at that stage, all the bathrooms should have had tiles and everything else in it. And he put a claim in, and he was hoping that it'd take 4 weeks to actually go through the process. By the time we got it in, my team processed it, sent it off to our funder. They had the QS go out within 7 days, and he rocks up and there's no tiling. And so he rejected the actual funding claim because it wasn't at the stage. Right, so there's cross-checks all the way through. Once the house is built, well, that's a bit of a stuff up. Anyway, that one should have been in there, and it said you paid the 65% balance. Right, step 3. So I apologise about that. But once it's completed, you pay the 65%. That's my exit, because I've funded the 65% on the way through. All right, so nice simple 3-step process. Now, this is the actual numbers behind all that. Now, I'm happy, Dev will get this. He's happy to send it out to everybody so you can have the whole presentation as well, so you can look at that at your leisure. Now, this is what, if you go to any land and house package or any builder, they're going to sell you a 2-part contract. Land and house. Contract for the land, contract for the build. Have you experienced that? This example, $538,000. How much are you going to pay the builder for that by the time you get a set of keys in your hand?
600,000.
Close. Because up until this stage, you've got 2 pieces of paper. There might be 130 pages each, but that's all you've got. You haven't built anything, you haven't bought the land, you haven't paid for it. By the time you get your construction funding, you've bought the block of land, you've transferred the title, you've paid the stamp duty, you've paid your interest holding costs, you've paid your legal fees, you've paid all the rest of it, and the builder says, thank you very much, you're finished, here's a set of keys, you can put your tenancy in there now. It's cost you 570 plus or minus a bit, depending on your CRA. That's reasonable? You've experienced that? That process is illegal inside your super fund if you're using debt. Can't do it. If you get caught doing it, there are some severe penalties. A super fund gets audited every year. The auditor finds out about that, they'll qualify the audit report going to the ATO, and that fund will be now a non-complying fund. They will charge you, I think it's 45% tax plus penalties on that property from that day onwards. And the only way to become make it not a non-complying fund is to sell the asset. You've sold the asset at full marginal rates.
Actually, Raymond, it's a bit worse than that. Say you had $1 million in the fund and you caused it to be non-compliant and it had a $50,000 income. A lot of people would say the tax on the $50,000 would be 15%. The tax on the fund's $525,000.
Yeah, on the asset value.
The fund is deemed to have been non-compliant forever.
But then the fines aren't necessarily just against the super fund. They're against you personally, as in the directors and members of the fund. So now your personal assets are liable. The ATO take this very, very seriously because they are out and about to protect, outside of a few other things, they want to protect people's livelihood in long-term retirement. All right? So that's going to cost you $570. Where we come into play here We charged $11,000 for our fee to do this whole process. That's how we make our money. Then we've got another, in this example, $30,000, and it covers all these costs. Because, and we've got an ATO public product ruling over this. For this to happen, we actually buy the block of land. We settle on it. And because we own so much land around the country, we're at the top marginal tax rate on land tax in every single state except Northern Territory and Tasmania. All right, can't get away from land tax. Rates, insurances, QS fees, legal fees, some mortgage fees, internal administration and project management. Interest, our interest is a little bit higher because of our construction funding, and also GST. Now in most cases, you can't get the GST back. In the NDIS, we'll run through how you can do that, working with your accountant to actually get that back. So that goes from a $570,000 two-part deal to a $611,000 single-part contract that you can put into your super fund every day of the week and twice on Sundays. Non-arms, like it's an arm's length transaction, it's legal, it's covered by an ATO public product ruling. Whatever you choose, we will build it. If you've got a 35% deposit of that bottom figure and it's against a block of dirt. I don't play in apartment spaces, or not interested in that. In my opinion, they're they're B and C class stock. And when you start to see some numbers that I'm going to run through now, you'll start to understand why. Again, I'll go back to why you're looking to invest. What sort of lifestyle do you want in retirement? What sort of lifestyle do you want prior to retirement? Because some people don't understand the availability of these high cash flow properties you can have outside of super as well. My old national marketing manager, she ended up buying two NDIS properties for a bit over $1 million. One in a family trust and one in a super fund at the same time. Now, this is actually her example, but I've scaled it back because I'm showing you two examples. This is a scaled back version based on average cash flow positive properties. And then I'll show you what she's doing in her NDIS high cash flow properties. Her and her husband, they've made a contribution, they've made a conscious contribution to maximise their maximum contribution into their super fund each year of $27,500. So that's the 11% normal contribution plus a bit extra on each of them. They started off with $250,000 and they're both around 35 years old. Now, on the left here, this is based on the moneysmart.gov website. You can put those figures in and get these same results. Where you're going to end up at 65 with that sort of investment. They end up with $2.6 million. It's a good chunk of change. Do you think you could live comfortably on $2.6 million? You compare that to buying 4 investment properties, positive cash flow properties, you end up with, at retirement, $4.5 million worth of property. Now, this here is saying, now the ladies in the room, you'll probably live to 91. Us guys are probably going to be back here somewhere, all right? But at 91, you end up with next to no money left over in your super fund because you've lived on it. Over here, because of the capital growth of the properties and you're not living on the capital, you're living on the positive cash flow coming from the rentals after they've been paid off, you end up with $8.6 million worth of property. Now, who's heard property doubles every 8 to 10 years? Might not. I'm saying in 25 odd years it doesn't even double. So this is my conservative accountant nature coming out of me, right? And you still might not even believe these figures. But once you get your head wrapped around these figures that I'm going to show you, then I'll show you the true figures of what my old national marketing manager is doing with NDIS properties. Now, that $2.6 million will result in $160,000 in income every year. So by the time you get to 91, there's nothing left though, but you've lived on $160,000 a year. One of the goals of Supavest is to give you a comfortable retirement, however you classify comfortable. but it's also to change generational wealth. Now, I look at my dad. He died broke. He was worried. My dad was quite ill in his last several years of his life, and we thought Mum was going to outlive him. Now, he died during COVID. He didn't die of COVID, but he died during that period, and I got to see him a couple of times, unfortunately, only in that period. His biggest stress wasn't that he was dying or that he was sick. He was worried about how he was going to look after his wife, my mum, when he died. How do you get to working all your life and be stressed about flipping money when you're dying? That broke my heart. Now, my mum ended up dying just before Dad, which it's not nice. It was a blessing for my dad. It was hard, but that was his stress. How he's going to look after Mum? Because he didn't have the right structure. He didn't have the right assets behind him. Now, he's got 4 kids that look after Mum, but that wasn't his problem. It was his responsibility. $160,000 a year. Do you know what that's telling you? That your quality of life, year on year, at that stage, is going to get worse off every year. It's a good marketing gimmick, 160, sounds like a lot of money. Who's got $100 on them today? How much can that buy today compared to 10 years ago? How much is that $100 going to buy by the time you retire? So what the government's telling you here at $160,000 a year is that every year your quality of life is going to go backwards because the cost of living is increasing. Unless you want to pull down more capital. And see here, that blue area there is already showing that by 84, you're starting to pull down government pension to keep that 160. Over here in property, now you're working on property that has been paid off. You're retiring on $204,000 a year in rental income. What happens to rents each year if your property is good and it's being managed correctly? Go up or down? Usually up. Now, if we have another global financial crisis or we have another pandemic and you're over here and you're basing your income based on the share market, what happens to income that you're living on here? If it's over here and it's based on rental income, even in COVID, during the period of time there was a rental freeze, but at the end of the rental freeze, everybody had to catch up on their rent anyway. So you still made your money. You didn't lose money. This here, you might think I'm pie in the sky sort of stuff, but at 35, you buy your first property, $611,000, it's positive cash flow. You buy your second property, $630,000 at 43. Fourth property, 52. And 67. At 67, you've still got $477,000 in your bank account. And your properties are paid off. And your rent's coming in are debt-free. What choices have you got? This is a plan. It's not hope. Now, these are the sort of properties these are some of the properties we've sold. Now, it's anywhere in Australia. It's where you believe and your advisors believe are the best investments that suit your criteria and your lifestyle choices that you want to have. All right? You choose the builder. If you want some help, we'll help you. But you choose them. We've got a client or clients that are doing subdivisions with their super fund. When I met him, he was a brother of a mortgage broker over here. He was living in Borkham Hills. He said, "Can you go and see him?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go and see him." He wanted to buy an NDIS property. I sat down with the guy. I found out he was an engineer, and in his part-time outside of super, he was flipping land. He was buying a block of land, subbing it into 3 or 4 blocks. And I said to him, "How much money are you making on each block?" He said, 150,000 per block. I said, "Why don't you do that in your super fund?" He said, "It's illegal." I said, "No, it's not with us." So guess what he's doing now? He's doing the same thing and just boosting up his super fund. And he's paying 15% tax on the profit that he makes on the deals. But he's just flipping them. But that suits him because that's what he does outside of super. All right, anywhere, any builder, your choice. Now, NDIS is a government scheme to look after the disabled people in Australia. Anybody heard of it? Yep. There's pros and cons. There's a whole lot of marketers out there that are flogging it, telling you pie in the sky stories. You can make $250,000, $300,000 a year out of a property that's going to cost you $1 million. Crap. There's no guarantees. It's a great scheme and it's a great business when it's done correctly. When you're aligned with the right advisors and the professionals that are running the business, right? The disabled people are living in inappropriate accommodation, and the government has done an amazing thing to be able to fund their lifestyle and put them in quality, appropriate accommodation to give them quality of life. There's organisations that specialise in just looking after those people. If you're going to play in the NDIS space, before you look at the house, now this might sound nasty, the house is not the asset. The asset, unfortunately, are the individuals that are disabled because the government funding is attached to them. So if you haven't got a quality product that they choose and that they like, you've got no income. You've just got a big white elephant that you've sold, that you've bought. So aligning yourself with quality advisors and quality suppliers through the NDIS scheme, you've got your best chances of getting some very good income. Now, NDIS, some of the money that we're talking about, and you'll see it on Facebook and all the social medias, they're promoting $250,000, $300,000 income. I'll give you, picture this. Who's seen the disabled people in the electric wheelchairs with a carer walking beside them going through shopping centres? They're big wheelchairs, aren't they? They're about this wide. Now, if you think about a normal house with a normal living room, this is the wheelchair, about that wide. And they want to sit in, watch some TV, and they want to sit out of their wheelchair in a seat. The seat that they're sitting in, now it's this wide. They need a lift to get them out of the wheelchair. That's this wide. And then they've got their medicine cabinet that follows them around everywhere in their house, and that's about this wide. So in one lounge room, that's one person. Now you try and fit 2 of those people in a house. And some marketers out there telling you can fit 4. Go figure. The first person coming in, they have choice. They might like the house. They choose the house. The second person that's disabled with their carers come in and they assess the house and whether it's suitable for them. The person and their carers have the choice. They don't have to take the house if they don't like it. And if that's a lot, now you double that. And there's some really good designs out there now that have got 2 separate living spaces, and you can very easily and every day of the week have 2 disabled people, but they've got 2 totally separate living areas. They're living in one house, but they've got totally separation of their personal space. But that's not what most of the marketers out there are flogging. They're flogging a 4 or 5 bedroom house with an overnight carer and trying to tell you can have 4 of these people in one house with one lounge room. Go figure. This isn't that. This is done correctly. We're working with the SDA provider. They find the participants, they tell us what to build, where to build it, how to build it, and what is needed. And we take the actual participant on the journey of the house build with us. So they get buy-in from the start. This house here, and this is what my old staff member is buying. $1.1 million it cost her, and she bought 2 of these, one inside a super and one outside, because she didn't want to continue working as hard as she was. And her husband is a dentist, and he's been a dentist for a long time, and he joked, he said, Raymond, I'm tired of looking down in the mouth every day. I can understand why dentists have got the highest suicide rate. But they've set one of these up in a family trust so they can have income to support their lifestyle before they get to retirement. But they're also doing this inside their super so they look after themselves long term. This one property, 36 years old, $1.1 million. It returns them $138,000 in retirement. Second property, 41. Now these properties, when they're making $120,000, $130,000 a year, the funders out there, we deal with Columbus Capital that provides me my wholesale funding, they will value these as a commercial valuation. Just like a commercial unit. They'll base it on a capex rate, so how much do you have to invest at a certain percentage rate to get a certain return? They will value these properties at $1.7 to $1.8 million based on the return coming from the NDIS. You can then borrow 80% of that capital valuation. Now, depending on how extreme you want to go with your planning, if it's cost you say 1.2, and it's now valued at 1.7, and you're going to borrow 80% of that, you can actually borrow 100% of the money, so you've got no money in the deal. The money coming in from the rental is paying off the loan and expenses and putting more money back into your super fund. Now you're in a high cash flow property. Now this is Susie and her husband, 45, 49, 53, 56. 6 properties. All NDIS, all high cash flow. At retirement, they've got $750,000 worth of money in the bank account, and the property's paid off. Total value of assets at $11 million at retirement.
And Raymond, their starting point was what, around about the $300,000?
They had $350,000. They're going aggressive. They're going to the 80% lend of the commercial valuation and reinvesting and going again. All right. Sure, they got $55,000 of their super going into their super fund each year on top of the NDIS money, and that's why they're being very aggressive. Now, if you're 50 years old and you've got $500,000 in your super, and we've had a couple of these clients in the last few weeks, and worried about how you're going to retire at 65, that's one of the plans that a principal out of one of the Queensland schools, him and his wife are working on. He's 55 and she's 45. At retirement, they're going to be on $500,000 worth of income from $500,000 that they've got today, because they're buying high cash flow properties and they're being aggressive on how they're going to end. They're working a plan. And they're doing it at a 15% tax rate. All right?
Even better when they retire, it's a 0 tax rate.
Yeah, depending on the rhetoric that's going around at the moment. But at the moment, that's $700,000 worth of tax-free income. Now, there's a whole lot of rhetoric. There's a $3 million cap coming in and blah, blah, blah. It's still better than anything else that's out in the market, even if the government decides to change tax rates. It's your choice. It's your money. Do some of it, do none of it, do all of it. If you don't lose 5 minutes of sleep tonight looking at these figures, if you do, get Dev's number, call him. I'll be on a plane at midnight, so I'm travelling, so he can't contact me. But do you see how a solid plan can change how you're going to be living in retirement? Now, if my dad had that, now, I'm saying if he had that, he was a stubborn bugger. Would he have done it? No. he didn't take my advice when he lost his money. Because it's like, what do they say? A prophet has no honour in his hometown. Go figure. Now, safe property, I'll finish off with this. This came about because we were doing these investments and people ended up having 50, 60, 80 grand left in their super fund and they were putting it into a bank account. They didn't want to put it back into the share market and they were making stupid returns. They were making next to nothing. The high cash flow properties like that, unless you've got some serious, like $300,000 in your super fund, you're not going to touch them. You have, like people, young kids, like my daughter, she's selling her music production studio at the moment because of the divorce, and she's taking that money, because they put all their money into the production studio, she's now taking that and investing it into 6 safe properties. Because she wants to be in property, but now she's gone out of music production, she's now a stunt woman, go figure. Jumping off buildings and getting set on fire, it's really great for a dad. But she wants security. But she doesn't want to be tied down.
Security jumping off.
Like she's 31, she's a really pretty thing, and she comes on the weekend and she's got bruises and cuts and it's like anyway, safe property. This now allows people that have got additional money that they want to put into super, and this is inside or outside super, they can get involved and buy 5% ownership under tenants in common. Now that means you're on title. You're not buying shares, you're not buying units in a unit trust, you own that part of the property. Your name is on the title.
Contract together?
Sorry?
You're not in a contract together, you're just separate contracts?
Separate contract.
Contract.
Tenants in common says,
Yep.
this part of the property is yours.
Yep.
And because it's a cash buy, there's no debt against it. If you want to sell it, I'll have first right of refusal because my company owns 65%. So we build them and then we sell the 35%. All right? And you can buy 5%, 20%, 15%, but 5% chunks. You get paid up to an 11% return based on the rental income coming from the properties. And these are all high cash flow properties. They're either NDIS or they're rooming houses. Now, rooming houses are, some people call them co-living, some people call them boarding houses, but these can have 5 to 9 fully self-contained suites in one house. Right, so it's a really good model. But you also pick up capital growth on the property. So we've got clients that are saving up for their deposit, and in Sydney you've got an 8 to 9 year saving regime to actually save for a deposit for a Sydney house. Now you can put that money in a bank account and each year you're going backwards because the property market's going up, or you can buy a 5% shareholding, get paid an 11% return and also pick up the capital growth on that property during the period. So again, it's choice. Now, on an average, you'll triple your money in 10 years, depending on the structure that you hold it in. Now you can hold this in your personal name, in a family trust, in your superannuation, talk to your advisors. Because it comes back to how you want to use the income and how you want to treat your tax. Now these are some of the properties that we've got on offer at the moment. Again, NDIS properties. This one, $54,000. And the rental return of the 11% is based on that, the amount you invest. The only other expense you've got on that is the stamp duty on that $54,000. Now these 3, 4, they're all Queensland. We've got some coming on board over here. We've got some co-living properties that are coming online early next year in Victoria. And we're meeting with a developer tomorrow where we've got a 12, on a 12 including the overnight accommodation. Yeah, so there's a 12 unit or 12 house development that we're doing, and this is an SDA provider, so they're the company that looks after disabled people, and they've got a demand for this number of people in this area. So we're building this 12 unit or 12 house development for them, and then we're putting it through safe development. So we're putting out, I think it's 45% shares across that, so people then can buy into that development on that side of it. But that'll be launched in the next couple of weeks. What next? That's about it. Now, if you do lose sleep, really, get Dev's number. But are there any questions?
Yes.
Yeah?
You mentioned NDIS, that your income is linked to people choosing that property.
Yeah.
How do you do that in your SAFE, for example, or in the modelling that you've presented?
Because we work with the SDA provider, because the SDA provider is the one that manages the actual participants.
Yeah, but the participants still need to choose the property. So if they don't choose, there's no income.
No.
Okay.
No.
So
But
there's no guarantee in this approach as well that you'll have that?
if anybody tells you there's a guarantee, yeah.
Okay.
All we can do is we can build what the SDA provider tells us they need for the demand that they have, right? Will some of the clients choose not to go? 100%. But there at the moment, that SDA provider's got 80, I'm going to say 80, it's a bit more than that, but they've got 80 developments that are let 95%, right? So they've been doing this since the start of the NDIS, right? So they know they've got a quality NDIS background, and they've got a quality provision of what is required for their participants that they manage.
So the more the market is flooded with that, then it's probably an impact on the interest that you'll generate eventually.
How do you
over
mean?
time. Because now there's a demand,
Oh, yeah.
therefore you'll get that interest rate. But in 10, 15 years, there's probably more of these, therefore...
Oh, 100%. Like, the government reassesses this every 5 years. In June, July, they reassessed it in the previous quarter for the past 5 years, and they actually increased the rates that they were paying. In saying that, Perth has only had the NDIS for a couple of years. East Coast have had it for a bit longer. On both, all over Australia, we're not even meeting the demand of what the government says we should be doing. I think we're at about 30% of what we should be doing.
Just to give you an example, there's 8,000 wheelchair participants in Perth that they're housing right now.
So there's a waiting list of 8,000 people
Yeah.
for what we build.
I'll give you an example. In my family circle, my sister, my younger sister, who lives down in Goulburn, her sister-in-law, she's 40-something. Her mum and dad are in their 90s. She still lives with her mum and dad. She's not high-functioning autistic. She'll never live by herself. At the moment, when her parents die, all her siblings won't take her in because they're working their butts off 2 jobs to be able to support their families. So she's going to go into care. My daughter, who's the stunt actress, her ex-husband, Nicholas, he's a high-functioning autistic. Like, he's represented Australia at the last 2 Disabled Olympics. He still lives at home. But even at the best he is, he's not going to live by himself. Now, he's lucky his mum and dad are mid-60s, but when they pass, he's going to come into the system. The number of people that I've seen over the last 25 years, and I was involved in this industry 25 years ago before it was the NDIS, the number of parents like that are across Australia looking after their children is huge.
There was an article on Channel 7, I think Monday last week, and in there it said that 38% of all of the NDIS participants were under 30, and roughly 50% of those were autistic.
But like, NDIS is one high cash flow property. Like, it's great, and when you're looking at co-living and rooming houses, now these are it's a normal house when you look at it, but inside there's 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 fully self-contained units, and with a common area that if you need it. But now that's providing accommodation for the young adults, and unfortunately a whole range of females 55 and above that have been divorced and lost everything. And they're now living in those accommodation. These are also being built around hospitals. Now, hospitals, how much is a hospital bed? Depending on who you talk to, it's between $4,000 and $12,000 a night. Now, there's people in hospitals that are well enough to go home, but because they live too far away from the hospitals, they can't go home. The hospitals won't release them. We're building co-living properties within 5 kilometres of hospitals, and the hospitals, now if you think about it, if it's only a 5-bedroom co-living property, you can now take 5 patients out of 5 beds. Now if that's only $4,000 a night, that's $20,000 a night additional that the hospital's now receiving from other patients that need those beds. They will pay, what is it, up to $1,000 a night, Michael? $1,000 a night to actually have that as a full-time facility for the hospitals. And that's just one use for it. We've got hospitals in near hospitals in Albury, where doctors are on 7-day rotational shifts that live outside of Albury or Wodonga, that come in for a 5-day stint, work at the hospital, and they have this as their permanent place of residence while they're on staff. Right, so the demand for that sort of thing is huge. Now we're about 15 to 20 years behind overseas in what they call micro apartments. And if you look at the smart developers around this space, they've actually gone overseas and studied what is happening overseas and what they're doing overseas. And they're bringing that same technology and same designs back into Australia. And where are we going to get hundreds of thousands of places each year in high-rise apartments? Yeah, maybe. But this is another way that we're going to provide accommodation for our younger generation and some of our older generation moving forward. So, again, it's not NDIS I use because I love it. I see it as a karma investment because, yeah, we're making some really good income. But we're changing the lives of people that have got no choice themselves. So if we can make a bit of money on the way through and also change people's lives, like the whole purpose about Supavest, yeah, we make some money on the way through. But if you think about the amount of money in superannuation, industry super funds, where is the majority of that money at the moment?
Stock market.
But whereabouts?
Overseas.
Exactly. The government and the rhetoric of the government over the last number of months is, industry super funds got to do more to actually build appropriate accommodation. They're not going to do that. What we've got in our hands here is the ability to change people's lives in how they're going to retire. Your money, your choice. But in doing that, we're now bringing that money. Like in the September quarter, there was just under 8,000 new self-managed super funds set up in Australia. That takes the total to just under 615,000 self-managed super funds. The total funds under management is just under $1 trillion in self-managed super funds. Each month, there's more than $1.32 billion of cash coming from industry super funds into self-managed super funds. That's people like you and me taking control of their life. Most of them don't know about Supavest. They don't know that they can choose to actually build high quality products.
Looking at high income products, the group we're seeing tomorrow, they've got 81 units down at Rockingham, and they estimate there's 23,000 new employees going to fit into Rockingham because of the AUKUS development down there. And currently they're let at $960 a week and 0.6% vacancy.
Yeah, exactly.
The demand for high income property is amazing.
Yeah. You had a question?
Yeah, no, thanks for your presentation. Two things, and I appreciate what you said about NDIS and there's other options. I mean, I guess one of the big pressures on the government at the moment is the spend on NDIS. I mean, yeah, you see, it sounds like you're probably closer to what's going on, but I mean, do you see how that might play out or how that may impact? I mean,
I'll be careful because I'm being videoed.
Yeah.
Whenever there is whenever there is a government scheme, what gets charged to the government, like years ago, like up until several years ago, I ran a demolition company for 10 years. Now, back a number of years ago, the government had a policy. They were spending a whole lot of money on schools and developing schools and building halls and stuff. Yeah, exactly. My business partner at that stage, he started off the demolition business that I got involved in. He picked up a contract to do some demolition. Now, we were, I think, 5 deep from the head contractor. We were making more money doing those deals than we would doing a normal commercial demo. And we were 5 deep. And we were doing the work. We were employing the guys, we were removing the rubble,
Government contracts.
Government contracts.
I think to answer that question on the NDIS as well, if you have a look at the reason, the reason why they created it was to give people quality of life and put it back into society. The other reason is have a look at the cost of inappropriate accommodation. And the government don't do anything to cost them money. I think Raymond touched on some of the bed costs in hospitals and things like that. It's been brought in to, provide great income, but it's an investor-funded program, and that's why they looked at the rates and increased the rates as of July 1 this year to say that, hey, the cost of building has gone up, cost of living pressures have gone up, interest rates have gone up, how do we continue to fund this? Because it's legislated on both sides of Parliament. It'd have to be, every single state would have to unanimously vote it out. It's like Medicare.
Yeah, and to actually bring it in, like this was like I was involved in the industry in DOCS and DADEC years ago, before it came in, but the discussion started back then. For the NDIS, like the SDA housing has been around for years, right, because it's government funded housing. The NDIS side of it, for that to come into play, every single premier in every state had to agree to give up their funding and give it back to the federal government to run the NDIS program, right? So for them to do that, there had to be some benefit for them, all right? Is it positive? I think it's positive all the way through. Now, will it change? Will it get better? Will it get worse? The government always tinkers, all right? Will they take some money away? Maybe. Will they add some more money like they did in July? Maybe. But at the moment, all we can say is this is, like even when you're tax planning, we can think we know what the government's going to do, good luck. All we can do is look at what the current legislation is, what the current environment is, and base our decisions on that with some factors around that. Yeah?
And I guess one of the risks you talk about, obviously the SDA, and again, I know we're talking about NDIS, but SDA providers, so that's one way you sort of manage risk, I guess.
100%.
The other risk at the moment, especially in this part of the world, is building risk. Just because of just I don't know what it's like in the eastern states, but certainly here at the moment, I guess it's just stop start.
It's got better since COVID.
Yeah.
It got really bad during COVID. Hey, the builders had a tough job because they were selling in the understanding that usually every 6 months there's price rises, and they were signing contracts at that stage. COVID happened, everything went crazy. Suppliers of product that had been paid for got turned around offshore because of some government legislation agreements, because of other stuff that was going on around the world. And so our market suffered, and our builders suffered, and you and me suffered because of government policy. That's got a lot better, and builders have gone from, over here, we were going from 52 to 60 week build times. Now we're pulling it back to, 30 weeks, Michael?
Yeah, average is probably 40.
Yeah.
Are you dealing with preferred builders or?
We deal with
40 weeks.
Yeah, we deal with about 300 builders nationally, but see, it's your choice. It's your money. Like if you want some guidance, we've got some builders, big builders, little builders, the whole lot. But you've got to be happy with it. If you don't like it, it's your money. I'm not saying you have to use anybody. All this is a solution that gives you the ability to have total choice on your money.
I've sort of defined in WA capacity with Ross North. I was with them last week with Ross North. And it was interesting, he said that they closed their books during COVID and they were running out to nearly 2-year build time. They're down to about, currently they're finished off in about 55 weeks.
They might have said that, but we were building with ABN Group, with Celebration.
Ross North now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They think they'll be back to a 9-month build.
Yeah.
Quite soon.
Like even Celebration, like everybody knows Celebration, the ABN Group, we've done a whole lot of deals with them over the last 3 years. The contracts that I was signing, because I personally sign every single contract, I was signing 52-week builds. I don't think one of them, the only one that came close to that was one that we had 3 that settled several months ago. That one stretched out to 42 weeks, and that was only because at handover, one of the properties got broken into and all the electrical and the gas system got ripped out, and that took 4 weeks to fix it up and patch it up. And that was signing a 52-week build. So there's pluses and minuses. But again, it's a choice. You like it, don't like it, you don't have to do it. This is another chance for you to take control of your money. All right?
Right, just on that, on the NDIS, are there different levels of care and so forth? So, sorry, the gentleman over there was asking about the NDIS. So you can opt for a sort of a less care category type thing that can be used if it's not used by NDIS or taken up by NDIS, it's easy to use for normal.
Yeah, so like semi-independent living, that's literally, it's really a normal house. Wider hallways, wider doors.
That you can blend between NDIS and then just a normal tenancy agreement with the
if you want to.
Back to NDIS.
Yeah, like some of the stuff we see through the co-living properties. Now we're talking about down in Melbourne, they work really well. We're talking to a builder at the moment where we're going to modify one. At the moment, when a co-living property gets built, one of the unit has to be wheelchair accessible. Now, up until July, that was worth about $18,000 that the government would pay for that person to live in that property. Now, in a normal situation, in a rooming house, you'd be paying $450 a week. So it wasn't really worthwhile having a wheelchair person in there. From July, that wheelchair person is now worth $45,000 a year. It's really worthwhile having that person in there now, right? And you can have, like we're working on a plan where on the ground level you can have 4 of those people there. And the top level you can have another 4 able-bodied people. That becomes a really profitable venture.
So $270,000.
Yeah. But again, it comes back to what do you want? You can now develop whatever you need. What are your end goals? You might need $1 million. You might be comfortable on 200. What are you comfortable in doing with yourself and your risk appetite and with your advisors? It's now open. You don't have to go down one path. You can choose whatever path you want to get to your end goals. But in everything I said tonight, if you haven't got written down goals, and I'm serious, written down, that you review. Like, hey, we're coming up to the end of the year. Who's ever done New Year's resolutions? Who's ever taken out a gym membership?
And never used it?
And hey, you might have gone for 2 weeks, and at the end of 4 weeks you think, geez, I haven't been to the gym. And the end of the year comes, all right, I'll reset that goal again. Goals, I'm going to say they're work in progresses, but if you haven't got them written down, it's just a dream. Seriously, if they're not written down, it's a dream. You're not serious. And if you haven't got that, don't invest. And I'm not talking about with your super, I'm talking about at all.
Who's the tenancy agreement with and how long do they sign for?
All right, the good SDA providers in the NDIS space, the SDA provider, you as a self-managed super fund or the investor will sign a lease with the SDA provider. And that's usually a 20-year lease. And the SDA provider then signs individual leases with the participants. All right, and this is really important because if you think about it from a participant's point of view, they're coming into this place as their forever home. They don't want to leave once they get a nice place, really.
Yeah.
Right? I shot a video, we're going to release it next week, with an SDA provider that we work very closely with about the pros and cons. It goes for about an hour, and it'll be available through with Dev. He's got 90 homes. And over the last 5 years, he's had 8 people leave. Now they've left because they've died, not because they wanted to leave. All right?
And with that 20-year lease, the government looks after the maintenance on the property. And also has a make good provision.
Yeah, but the important part is when you're looking at an NDIS house, you've got to look at it through the participant's eyes. If you're in a wheelchair and you go to your house at the moment, how could you get around? Could you go to the toilet? Could you get up the stairs? Could you go to the bathroom? All right? It's got to be looked at through the participant's eyes. And the lease is a really important part, because when they come and assess the property, one of the questions them or their carers ask is how long's the lease that the SDA provider's got, because that shows them how long the commitment is for the SDA provider for them and their life. And there's a whole lot of marketers out there that say they've got a 5 + 5 + 5 or a 2 + 2 with options. Now, if you're the disabled person and you've got a choice of, and if everything else is equal, if you're coming into a house and it's got a 2 + 2 with options, or you're coming into a house and it's got a 20-year lease on it, which one's got bigger commitment? The latter one, because it shows the commitment of the investor to the participants that are coming into the house.
So just a question, so obviously the payment is done by the government and SDA, not by the participant.
The participant, there's a reasonable rental contribution that gets paid by the participant from their pension. I think it's 25% of their pension gets paid for the rental, and the rest of the money gets paid by the government monthly in arrears to the SDA provider. And the only people that can receive that money are registered SDA providers. It's not the normal property management people. All right? So, but
during the lifetime of the build, who actually owns the title, who owns the property?
Through this, my company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Until we pay it off.
Until you pay me the 65%. But yeah, in saying that, you've got a capable interest across that property. So financially, like I take out a first mortgage, I use the property to secure my construction finance, right? And that pays the bill to his progress payments. So I've got a first mortgage against that. You've got a capable interest on top of that. So that limits my financial transactions, anything more on that property, because your caveat stops me.
Who agrees the price with the builder?
You do. It's your money.
Yeah.
Then we just put it through that calculation that I showed you. On the back end of our web.
Bring any builder to you and say, that's our builder, this is the quote I got from him, that's what
That's it. That's it. It goes, we put the land price, build build term and state, and it punches out a bottom number, and that's your single part contract price.
Because if that property increases in value, or the market at one point, so technically, is there a gain, or is it put to options? Or?
No, it is a full sale. I've sold that property to your super fund for that price. I'll give you an example. A French lady that paid me a deposit 2.5 years ago, that her land is going to be settling, it's going to be titling in March next year. Now she's paid me the deposit.
Right, okay. Yeah, it's a single contract.
Single part contract. Now, 2.5 years ago, the interest rates were different from what they are today. I gave her a fixed price contract 2.5 years ago. We'll start building in March 24. Now for her, she's picked up $300,000, $400,000 capital growth on the land down in Victoria. Her build price will go up probably 100 grand. Her interest cost doesn't change. That deal I'll lose money on every day of the week.
So if Supavest was smart, as you're saying, you buy the land off her now.
No, I can't. Unless she pulls out. then I'll hold the block of land.
Yeah.
Like, we've had 2 deals during COVID. There was build increases. We had a financial planner choose the builder. The build stretched out, didn't start until about this time last year. The build price went up $160,000 on each property. Went back to the client, this is the increase. The client said, not interested, want my money back. Okay, we gave them the deposit back. I looked at it and I'm thinking, I'll own those. So I now own those properties, and 2 of those are now the safe properties that we're building now. We've picked up the capital growth, but the client got their money back because they didn't want to pay the extra in money. So, yeah.
Maybe just give us an idea of your company, how many staff members?
Yep, we're based in Sydney, or in Dural, just on the outskirts of Sydney. We're on 5 acres up there. I've currently got just under 30 staff. I've got another 4 staff in sales starting in January. I've got another 4 overseas staff starting in South Africa, a couple this week and a couple next week, in support staff for what we're doing here. We run the whole business and the project management side. I've got a digital marketing agency that we run to support our B2B partners in how they market and advertise to the end clients. And we've got a property management business that we're just starting up, and a legal side that we're working on at the moment as well. So all of that, it's a big business, it's a good business, it's growing, and we're growing fast. We're the only people in Australia that give you this choice. There's some other builders that'll build single part contracts, but it's in set locations. We're the only company across Australia that give you total choice on how you're going to invest your money, because this is my concept, this is what I've developed. Now Michael, my director of sales, he's been with me since day one. We've done the hard yards, we've pushed it. We actually launched, I came up with this product in January 2020. I had to go out, the concept from an accounting point of view was relatively simple. There's a bit of complex behind it. The hardest part was finding the funding to fund it to cover the 65% construction funding. And that originally came through a family office out of Melbourne. We went through that for 12 months. Now, we started this in the middle of COVID. And we've come through and we've developed it up. And mid last year, we hit our EBITDA numbers and we went back out to market to refinance our construction funding. And Columbus Capital came on board and they took over a whole portfolio. And they're the number one or two, depending on who you talk to, tier 2 lender in the self-managed super fund space.
Right, it's probably worthwhile mentioning that first tranche of money was $250 million.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. But it's like, to be able to fund this, Columbus Capital have come on board and they've got deep pockets. So as we grow, they've got the facility to be able to fund whatever we do, and they're backing us.
Are you restricted purely to residential, or is there commercial capacity in there as well?
Whatever you want. We've had some people talk about commercial, but
it's like industrial warehouses.
Yeah.
For sale, for use, for rental, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we've had people that talked about it. We've had people talk about childcares, but when they look at the returns on commercial compared to the high yield resis, they've gone high yield resis every time. Where I see commercials, and this has happened a whole lot of times, even prior to us, the commercials are really well where you're running your business from the factory and your business actually rents from your super fund to run your business from it. I see that happen a lot. But we haven't built it. We've had some inquiries, but haven't gone down that. No one's actually, not that I don't want to, people just haven't followed through on it. They've gone to resi. So, hey, thank you very much for listening. There could be a lot of, if you'll have some questions tonight, write them down, get them back to Dev. Him and his team, and we're available. Like, we work 7 days a week. But thank you very much for listening to me ramble on a bit and share my dream and passion about how we're changing Australia and Australian livelihoods. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks. Like I said, obviously you've got a lot of questions.